my prayer, O Lord. Listen what David says. Hear my prayer, O Lord. Listen what he said. Listen to my supplications. Answer me in your faithfulness and in your righteousness. David said, for the enemy has persecuted me. He has crushed my life down to the ground. Listen what it says. He has made me dwell in dark places like those who have been long dead. David said, my spirit is overwhelmed and weak within me. My heart grows numb within me. Lady, I see it. Where your heart grows numb within you. You know God's there, but there's a numbness. All the stuff. All the stuff. Then David says, I remembered the days of old. Oh. David said, I remember the days of old. I meditate on all that you have done. I ponder the works of your hands. I reached out my hands to you. He said, my throat, listen what he said. He said, my throat thirsts for you. He was saying, I'm parched. I'm messed up. I laid with a woman that wasn't my wife. The ministry's over, and God said, it's not over. People will say it's over. The enemy will tell you it's over. Just like you walked out of my presence, God said you can step right back in. But there's got to be something that happens in your heart, David. You have to start realizing that what you are needing to quench your thirst is not another jewel in your crown. It's a bended knee in my presence for my name's sake. Everybody say, for his name's sake. Boy, that's a really important part. For his name's sake. Now watch this. He said, I remember the days of old. I meditate on all that you have done. I ponder the works of your hands. I reached out my hands to you. My throat thirsts for you as a parched land thirsts for waters. Then David says this, man, I dig the relationship that David and God had, because David said this to God right here. He said, answer me quickly. Everybody say it right now. Say, answer me quickly. Say, I need an answer now. Is that wrong? No. David's just expressing his heart. How many of you know God already knows that? Say yes. Now watch this. Answer me quickly, O Lord, my spirit fails. He says, do not hide your face from me, O Lord. Let me hear. Oh man. See, he started to remember the loving kindness. He said, let me hear your loving kindness in the morning. In other words, when I wake up, I'm going to wake up hearing your voice. Your loving kindness is going to be the first thing that I hear every morning. Then listen what David said. Even though I've been through all of this junk, I still trust you. He said, God, all this stuff, Michaela, all this stuff I've been through, surrounded by all of these things, God. Do you realize that David never lost a war on the battlefield? Not one time did he ever lose a battle on the battlefield. Every young man wanted to be like David, and every young lady wanted to marry a man like David, because can I say this to you, please? And don't take this wrong. He knows me in public and he knows me in private. And he wants to be so intimate with me that he comes to me and we discuss those things that are not like him. And he doesn't condemn me, but he says, I will help you through this. He doesn't condemn me. There's no condemnation in him. How many of you with me so far? Say yes. Listen what he says. He says, I trust in you. Now listen what he says. He said, now Lord, I want you to know I trust you. Now teach me. Listen, everybody say this with me. Say, teach me again. Everybody say it. Say, teach me again. How many of you saying that? Lift your hand. Teach me again. Teach me again where I'm at, Josh. Joshua, say to the Lord, teach me again from where I'm at, the dynamic in life where I'm at. I trust you. I've been through the darkness, but God, your loving kindness wakes me up every morning. Now, I trust you. Teach me again. Because I'm thinking differently now. I don't think like I did 10 years ago. I don't think like I did 5 years ago. I'm not thinking like I did 2 weeks ago. Teach me again in the dynamic of life that I'm living in right now. Teach me with what I know right now. Teach me what to accept and what to reject right now. Teach me the frame of mind that I'm supposed to be in and the attitude that I'm to carry and the personality that I'm supposed to have. Teach me your nature. Your attributes, your integrity, your character, your credibility, your dignity. Teach me. Watch now. Teach me. Teach me the way. Listen what he says now. Teach me the way in which I should walk. David's been serving the Lord for years, but now he's saying, teach me again. Now teach me after I've been through this process in life. Teach me again the way that I should walk, that I might bring honor to your name and that I might restore your name. How many of you hear what I'm saying? Teach me the way in which I should walk. Listen what he says. For I lift up my mind, my will, and my emotions to you. He said, I lift up my soul. Everybody say, lift up your soul. My mind, my will, and my emotions, I lift up to you. Rescue me, O Lord, from my enemies. Now listen what David says. He says, because right now, I'm going to step into you. And I'm going to take my refuge in you. All of my mess-ups, all of my screw-ups, all of my quitting, all of the shame, all of the anxiety, all of the stress, all of the problems, I'm stepping into you. I'm coming and I'm stepping into you. And once I come into you, you become my refuge. How many of you want God to be your refuge? Shout yes. No, if you want him to be your refuge, shout yes. And in that place of refuge, he begins to teach you and I again. Listen. He goes on to say, and he gets more specific. David says, teach me, not listen. He says, teach me your will. That's not what he said. Johnny didn't say, teach me your will. He said, teach me to do your will. Because David had done the will of the Lord in the first phase of ministry. In the second phase of his ministry, he knew the will of the Lord, but he did it by his own, he went but with his own desires. Now he's in third phase of ministry. How many of you with me say yes? Now he is in third phase of ministry, and he's saying, God, don't reveal to me your will. This is what he is saying. He said, teach me to do. See, we got to get our kids in this atmosphere. And mom and daddy got to ask the Lord to teach us again, because we're in the third phase of ministry after the second cleansing. Do you know that Jesus cleansed the temple at the beginning of his ministry in John chapter 2? And then at the end of his ministry, it tells us, I think it might be in Luke or Mark, I can't remember. At the end of his ministry, he cleansed the temple again. 3 years, 5 months, and a few weeks, he cleansed the same temple he cleansed at the beginning of his ministry. He cleansed at the end of the same things. And then he began to teach them again. Teach me to do your will. Listen what he says now. Teach me to do your will so that I can build the kingdom. Teach me to do your will so I can please you, oh Lord. How many want to be a God pleaser? Lift your hand. Shout yes. Everybody shout, teach me again. Shout, I'm in a place of refuge. He wakes me up with his loving kindness. Teach me to do your will so that I may please you. Then he goes on and listen to the declaration he makes. He says, for I put you back in your rightful place. You are my personal one and only God. I trust no other. Watch. You know what David lost concern about? The image. Can I tell you the only image I'm concerned about is the image of God? Everybody shout, restoring the name. Concerned about God's image. Do you know when people look at me? Golly, this is where grace comes in, because I have to be careful. You know how many times? When I said truckloads of grace and mercy, I mean truckloads of grace and mercy. On me. For me. The Bible says, surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life. But I want to tell you something. His grace is more than sufficient for you and I. It's a powerful thing. But listen, I'm going to go on and finish this. For you are my God. Everybody say, you, Lord, are my God. Now listen to what he says. Let your good spirit, listen at this. He says, let your good spirit lead me on to a balanced life. No. He didn't say a balanced life. He said, let your spirit, let your Holy Spirit lead me to a level place. Everybody say level place. Say it again, say level place. Let your good spirit lead me on level ground. Then listen to what he says. Then he goes back to this. Save my life, O Lord. But now he's not saying, for my name's sake. He's saying, save my life, O Lord, for your name's sake. Because I'm done building my kingdom, God. I am building your kingdom, and this is all for your name's sake. My name doesn't even have to be mentioned. How many of you know we mean that here? Shout yes. In your righteousness, listen what he says. I love this, man. This is so stinking cool. Bring my life, or bring your righteousness. Your righteousness, let your righteousness bring my life out of trouble. In other words, I want to step into a place of refuge that is in you, and all of a sudden you are surrounding me, you are with me, you are teaching me again, and now all of a sudden I'm not building my own kingdom, I'm back building, God, your kingdom. Let your righteousness bring my life out of trouble. How many of you have ever been in trouble? Some of y'all in trouble now, but we're coming out of it. You got in trouble in your head, not in your pocketbook, in your head. You got in trouble in your soul, in your mind, in your will, and in your emotions. You went by the direction of how you felt and to please self and called it God and called it righteousness, but it was self and unrighteousness. Stay with me. Smile at me. In your loving, listen, I love this. Listen to what it says. I love this. And this is very important. It says, in your loving kindness, silence my enemies. I don't know about you, but how does the enemy come against you? He starts talking. Silence. Everybody say silence my enemies. Come on, say silence my enemies. You wouldn't know if you didn't hear. The enemy starts talking. And you have not been in a place of refuge. You will not allow God to teach you again. So you're still thinking, well, they're against me. They're this, they're this, they're this. Can we please move on? Look, I'm telling you the truth. How can I say this? Been there. Instead of saying, who do they think they are? Why don't you ask God, who do you think you are? I dare you to ask God, who do you think you are? Somebody said, that's dangerous. No, it's not. It'll put you in a place where you've never been before, and you'll find out things about God that you never knew. It'll take you to another level, to another dimension. God will start teaching you again because you have entered back into his righteousness. You have entered into a place of refuge. I'm telling you, this. How many of you hear what I'm saying? None of this am I making up. It's all coming out of the Word. Now watch this. I'll give you the chapter in a minute. Y'all on your phone trying to find it. You don't even know what version I'm talking out of. I'm talking out of some King James, some New King James, some Amplified. I've got them all three memorized pretty good. Just stay with me a minute. God, forgive me. You're in it. In your loving kindness, silence my enemies. But he goes further. And then he says this. How many of you know that through and by the cross of Calvary, Jesus made a show of Satan openly, and he destroyed the power of the... How many of you know that? Say yes. So watch this. He not only says, silence my enemy, David says, destroy my enemy. He wasn't talking about flesh and blood, because David understood one thing. I want to tell you what David understood, even though he was a man that went into battles and there was a lot of blood that was spilled at his hands. That's why he couldn't build the house of God. And God said, you can't build my house because you're a man that has shed blood. How many of you hear what I'm saying? But I want to tell you what David knew. He knew that he wasn't wrestling against flesh and blood, but he was wrestling against principalities, powers, and spiritual wickedness and high places. Everybody say, we're not wrestling against flesh and blood. You're not. One of the most powerful principalities you will ever face is that principality called self. T. Cruz been praying for you and your family. See them all lined out there today. I want to tell you something. You know what? You can't hide in this church. I don't care if we get up to 1,000 people, you're not going to be able to hide. And somebody say, how come? Say, come on, say, how come? Because you can't hide from the presence of the Lord. I love that. Okay, turn to the one next to you and say, dig it. Yeah, that's an old saying. I'm trying my best to bring it back. We're going to finish up now. In your loving kindness, silence my enemy. In your loving kindness, make a show of the enemy openly. You've taken away his authority. You've taken away his power. You've silenced him. Destroy him. He even goes on and he uses the word afflict. How many of you have ever felt afflicted? Lift your hand. David said, and take care of all of those who afflict my life, because I have stepped back into a place of refuge. I've stepped back into your righteousness. You wake me up every morning with loving kindness, with all of my mess ups, with all of my screw ups, with all of my weaknesses, with all of my failures. I'm back in right standing with you, Lord, for your name's sake. Now teach me again. You're listening, right? Because you know I'm going to come to you after the service and say, I want you to judge the word. And you tell me the truth, because you're not a yes man. And you don't want it your way, you want it God's way. I'm sorry. And I'm going to say this, even though Candace, thanks for the word this morning. I appreciate you giving the word for his name's sake. I appreciate you, Chelsea, giving the word concerning your life for his name's sake. I appreciate you opening up this service today with announcements for his name's sake. I appreciate you taking up tithe and offering for his name's sake. I appreciate Josh praying over this service for his name's sake. I appreciate you, Donna Weiser, for being here for his name's sake. I appreciate this precious woman sitting next to you that no longer is a stroke going to have an effect on her life, but all mobility is coming back to you for his name's sake. What if they start bringing them here in stretchers? Oh, God. Help my faith. Everybody shout out, help my faith. Shout it, shout, help my faith. David said, and take care of all those who afflict my life. Now listen what he signs off with. Listen to this. For I am your servant. I do not serve myself. I do not serve people to get their recognition. I serve you, God. And then when I'm serving you, then you tell me how to serve people for your name's sake. You're either going to serve self, or you're going to serve people and what they want, or you are going to serve God. How many of you choose to be a servant of God? Shout yes. Everybody say, I am your servant. Now, I'm going to give you the chapter, okay? Are you ready? How many of you are ready for the chapter? Psalm 143. Now you're going to go home and say, Pastor lied to us. So you have to find it for yourselves. No, it's Psalm 143. Read it from beginning to end, and I would challenge you to read it 20 times. And the first time, read it just to yourself. The second time, read it out loud. From then on, just start reading it out loud. Everybody say, read it out loud. Everybody say, faith cometh by and hearing. You can't build any greater faith than you reading this word out loud to yourself and your own physical ear hearing it. I'm telling you. So today, that's what we got. Boy, them notes didn't do us no good this morning. If you're here today and you want God to restore your life completely, not saying you're going to be perfect, I'm saying you're going to walk in forgiveness and you're going to walk in purity. Not saying there's not, somebody said, you just sound like you're making excuses. I'm not making excuses, John. I want to tell you something. Can I tell you this one thing? A bad attitude's a sin too. You know that? Having a bad attitude and treating people and ignoring people and being harsh and hard to people. Causing people to have insecurities. How many of you heard what I just said? If you're here today, right now, and in your life, because I believe He does it completely. I believe He wants to bring a total and a complete restoration and reconciliation to you as an individual, to your family, to your marriage, to your relationships, to your sons and daughters. I mean, a complete restoration. And you might have been in church for 50 years, and people know that you're born again. They know you've got weaknesses. They know you've got faults, and you've admitted that. And you've been in church serving Jesus for a long, long time. You've had some great victories, and people seen you prophesy and all this stuff. But now listen, this is what I'm saying. But somebody sees you that hasn't seen you in 25 years, or maybe they just saw you last week, and they come to you and they say, man, you've changed. How many of you heard what I just said? You've been serving God most of your life, and you hang out with an individual 2 or 3 times a week, and that individual comes to you and says, man, I hang out with you all the time, but you're not who you used to be. You don't think like you used to think. You don't talk like you used to talk. Man, you have really changed, and I'm around you all the time, and I see these changes and these alterations and these adjustments. And you know why it is, precious? I'll tell you why it is, Taylor. Because you stepped out of yourself into a place of refuge, into a place of righteousness, and you have said to Him, you've said this, teach me again. You said that. Teach me again. The other way didn't work. Teach me again. I say bring them to church and let them fall asleep on the pew. Just get them in the presence of God. Somebody said, how far back you go? My family sat on the front row, piano side. I laid on what they called a pastel Pentecostal pallet. It was made by the women in the church, and they anointed it with oil. And I would lay on that, and before I'd go to sleep, I'd pick the gum off the bottom of the chairs. And anyways, oh, it's true. That was years ago, you know. There'd be people shouting and praising and dancing all around us. They'd come by me, just a boy, just a little guy. I didn't know, and they'd be praying in tongues. Them old grandmas would come and get me, and they'd pick me up, and I'd wrap my legs around them, and they'd walk around that church praying in the Holy Ghost. I want to tell you what people are getting ready to look for. People are getting ready to look for real. No synthetic, pure silk. They're going to be looking for real. Psalm 143. Take it home, read it. I challenge you to read it 20 times. The first time, read it to yourself. The next 19 times, read it out loud to yourself. Fill the room up where you're at. Read it out loud. Well, if you're here and in your life, you want complete restoration and reconciliation in your life, I want you to stand to your feet right now. I mean, you want complete restoration and